You ever wonder why some fried calamari is crispy, tender perfection, while others turn into a soggy, rubbery mess?
We serve food here, sir.
Not all fried calamari is created equal. We've all had that experience craving those beautiful, crispy calamari rings, only to bite into disappointment. Well, that is no more. Today we're spilling the secrets on making super crispy, super tender fried calamari at home every time. And it's way easier than you think. Of course, it starts with our calamari. Now, these are partially clean. If you get them from a good fishmonger, they'll kind of take care of most of them and just leaves us with a few little things to do. The skin's been peeled. Sometimes they haven't removed the inside, so you always stick your finger in to check. And I rinse these and then let these sit in the refrigerator on a paper towel covered. And then a few hours ago, just took the cover off to let them dry out. Of course, they come with the bodies and the tentacles. Now, the bodies have these wings on them, how they move around. Some people like to keep them on. I like to take them off and they just sort of rip off. Just tear off all the wings. So we have a clean body. So now for the tentacles, that's really long right there. First thing I'm gonna do is just trim it up. So we got that. Now you can feel there is sort of like a beak. That's a hard piece right here that we wanna get off. So I'm gonna cut it right above where the tentacles begin to fray out. Take my hand, feel where the beak is, and then just cut right off. And that's our tentacled calamari piece. Now, some people think that's fine. I think that's a little too thick and big. So what I like to do is cut that right in half. You're gonna get better pieces out of the tentacle there. Now, for the rings, just trim an edge off, and then however thick or thin you want, I like maybe a quarter, half inch like that. Not too thin, not too thick. And then just go through and slice up all the rings. Got a nice bunch of calamari rings. And get those into a bowl, go through, repeat with the rest of the calamari. Now we got our calamari slices and tentacles. Now to make sure they're nice and tender, we're gonna use a little bit of buttermilk to soak them in. Just about a cup, enough to just soak them and cover them. I'm gonna be frying these up with a little cherry pepper, so I'm just gonna throw in a little bit of that juice in there. Make a little brine. Just stir that all up. And we're gonna let that sit in the fridge, 30 minutes, no more. So now we've prepped our calamari, we've got it marinating and soaking and tenderizing. That's the first step. Now we gotta take care of the second step, which is the dry dredge. It's gonna consist of cornstarch and flour, 50-50 of each, and then a bunch of spices to flavor it. Now we need about a cup and a half of each, roughly, but I just basically cut the pan in half, fill half up with the flour, and then, roughly fill up the other half with the cornstarch. Now to that, generous amount of salt. More than you think, because it's all really bland. And that's gonna be like the main seasoning of this calamari. Some garlic powder, about a tablespoon, but I just kind of lightly coat the whole top. Onion powder, same amount. I like to add celery seed to like fried seafood. It just kind of adds a nice little touch. Something you don't know like what it is, but it's nice. And then about like 50 cranks of black pepper. And just whisk it all together. Now, our dry dredge is done. The next step is the wet dredge, and that's pretty simple. We're just gonna treat this as a pre-made little dredge mix. I got a half cup here. I'm gonna add 1/2 cup, maybe a little bit more. Total, maybe a 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup. Now to that, we're going to be adding vodka. Why? Because vodka evaporates quicker than water. So this is going to evaporate off real quickly, leaving a really crispy shell on the outside. When you cook calamari, right, they're moist. So even if you get it crispy, it's hard for it to stay crispy. We're trying to maximize that. I'm gonna add about 3/4 cup to start. It's a little thin, and we're gonna be transferring the calamari that's in the buttermilk to this. So even though I want that batter a little thin at the end, I want to kind of prep it for that kind of wet calamari and then thin it back out when I add it with the buttermilk. So that's pretty thick. I think we can start there. Now we got our wet dredge prepped and our dry dredge prepped. One thing I forgot to add is baking powder. Just add about 2, 3, 4 tablespoons. Still got 15 more minutes to let the calamari marinate. That gives us time to focus on the oil. I filled the pot up a little under halfway with some good neutral frying oil. The faster we cook the calamari, the more tender they're gonna be. So now it's been 30 minutes. We've got our calamari, we've got our thick, yet to be completed wet batter and our dry batter back here, which we can kind of just push off to the side. I've also got some cherry peppers that have drained. We're gonna be frying those as well for a little aesthetic bite. So like I said, our batter is thick. We've got our calamari with some of that buttermilk in it. So I'm gonna start to just transfer that to the batter, then just mix it up and see how much looser the batter gets. We want it to be looser, but still coat the calamari. See how it's kind of just like dripping off? It's a nice coating batter. The inside of all those rings get nice and coated, but it's not gloopy and thick. It's a good consistency. Now I'm gonna take our cherry peppers, dredge them in the flour. These haven't been soaking, so we wanna make sure we get some flour that will adhere to the cherry peppers so that the batter adheres to them. Dust off the excess, get those into the batter. A little bit of adjustment after adding the flour. And then we wanna start taking the rings, make sure everything is nice and separated. Make sure the flour gets in between the rings. Now we just wanna get them coated and start tossing them, trying to get every ounce of the calamari coated in that flour. At the start, you might find some pieces that look a little dry and gummy, but you keep tossing them with love, go through, make sure they're all looking real caked on with that dredge. Then what you wanna do is spread them back out and sort of cake on and dry that dredge onto every piece so that it's nice and crispy, stays adhered to the calamari. It's nice and perfect. We're gonna let that hang out while the oil gets up to temperature, occasionally giving it a little toss, then we're ready to fry. So I'm serving these with a pot of weekday sauce. I've got that heating up on the back burner. I'm gonna use a sheet tray with a wire rack, set that up to the back. That's for the cooked calamari, and I'm gonna take my dredging station, place it next to the pot, and I like to fry rings with rings and the tentacles with tentacles. So I'm gonna get a bunch into the oil, make sure it's at a high 370 to 380 degree temperature. And we're gonna stir it around and cook it until it's nice, golden brown and crispy. We're looking for super high heat and a super quick cook to ensure we don't overcook them and make them nice, crispy, and tender. Once they're crispy and golden brown, drop them on a wire rack, hit them with some salt, and then we're gonna go in with the tentacles because they're a different shape and size. Cook all of those the same way, short, quick, make sure that oil is nice and hot, and then get those on a wire rack to cool. Then we're gonna go ahead in small batches and quickly cook all these calamari. Now, if you cook these too low, you may not get as crispy of a texture as you want. They may be a little bit greasy, and they may not have evaporated all the moisture inside that causes them to sog up. So high heat, short fry is the secret to this step. And as you can see, all the pieces of calamari are perfectly crispy. It's like a nice crunchy shell that's going to adhere to it. Now we're ready to plate. I'm gonna serve up a little bit of my weekday sauce in a ramekin, and then I'm just gonna start piling high that calamari, just like you'd see in a restaurant. Of course, we need a good amount of lemon wedges to go with the dish, and we just season it on top lightly with some fresh parsley. And the last step to this is ensuring you eat it immediately. It will stay crispy, but if you eat this immediately, it's gonna be the crunchiest calamari you've ever had. Crispy, tender, and it's got this flavor that takes me back to the Jersey Shore. Any boardwalk restaurant that battered and fried something had this flavor I never could put my finger on. Just a combination of spices. And that is as nostalgic as it gets for me. You gotta take one of the cherry peppers and one of the rings. That's the bite. This is fantastic. Spring is in the air. I can feel that nostril sensation. If you're a big seasonal cooker like I am, this is gonna serve you well through spring and summer. Recipes down in the description. That's all I have today. I'll see you next time. Until then, take care of yourself and go feed yourself.